new report out of the New York Federal Reserve, and we have to talk about it. Because what I've been talking about for years and a major concern that I've had basically since the pandemic, well, it looks as though it's starting to happen. So let's get into it. Now, I know that we talk about debt on this channel all the time, but this specific report is a quarterly report out of the New York Federal Reserve, and it goes over household debt and how debt is trending, not only with the amount of debt that people are taking out, but how people are falling behind on debt and by how much. This report was released about a week ago, and it is reflected of Q1 data. So let's first talk about the good. Now, despite the fact that debt overall increased and debt is still reaching all-time highs month over month, there are multiple forms of debts that have actually decreased. Credit card balances, which now total to $1.18 trillion outstanding, fell by $29 billion during the first quarter. But despite this decrease quarter over quarter, it is still up over 6% from this time last year. Auto loan balances declined by $13 billion and now stand at $1.64 trillion, which is only the second time since Q2 of 2011 that auto loan balances have decreased quarter by quarter. And other balances, which include retail cards and other consumer loans, fell by $12 billion. But student loans increased by $16 billion. More on that later. Now, in this slide here, you can see the number of accounts by loan type. Whenever we're talking about number of accounts, it's like saying that you have one credit card, but maybe that credit card has a $5,000 balance. That credit card could be $5K, $10K, $20,000 on it, but at the end of the day, it is only one account. So this graph here is showing the different accounts, and you can see that credit cards have increased significantly over the last couple of years, while auto loans, mortgages, and revolving debt have remained relatively flat. But what I specifically want to talk about this video isn't so much the amount of debt that people are taking out, which even though it has decreased quarter by quarter, it is still extremely high. Instead, what I want to focus on is delinquencies in people who are falling behind on their debt. You can see here a total balance by delinquency status. This is across all loan types, so auto loans, credit cards, mortgages, things like that. And you can see that in the first quarter of this year, the amount of loans that entered delinquency status absolutely skyrocketed. And we are officially heading closer and closer to pre-pandemic levels, with 90 and 120-day delinquencies seeing the largest increase. Post-pandemic, you saw a bit of reprieve with all delinquency types because of the fact that there were so many different programs out there that helped people avoid delinquency and continue making payments on their debt. This was either through programs that just allowed for people not to pay on their debt and not fall into delinquency, or alternatively, it was because people had more money in their pockets due to COVID-era stimulus packages. These two things really sent delinquency statuses at all-time lows over the last couple of years, and you can see this depicted in this graph. Delinquencies for loans dropped significantly between Q1 of 2020 and Q1 of 2021, and it continued to go down until Q1 of 2023, where it's been increasing ever since. And Q1 of 2023 is really where the turning point began of people running out of COVID-era stimulus, and these programs that I mentioned earlier began to end. Now, you may be wondering what is causing this debt right here to become so much higher and to really enter that pre-pandemic territory. And the answer is quite simple. While credit cards and auto loans are absolutely affecting this, it really comes down to one specific loan type, and that is student loans. You can see here that the percent of balances on 90+ day delinquent student loans has absolutely skyrocketed. But before we go into that, I do want to point out that student loans isn't the only loan type that has gone up significantly over the last year, because credit cards have as well. In fact, whenever we look at delinquencies for credit cards specifically, you can see that they're at the highest level that they've been at since about 2010, 2011. And it is very, very quickly approaching the Great Recession territory of about 13%. Credit cards have seen a sharp increase since Q1 of 2023, and even over the last year, you can see that the increase has been substantial. Mortgages, while they are ticking up, they are still historically low. And similar to credit cards, auto loans are quickly approaching pre-pandemic levels and are sitting at 5%. But where the big red flag comes into play is with student loans. And you can see here that percent of balances 90+ days delinquent is sitting between maybe 7.5% to 8%, which still isn't quite as high as pre-pandemic levels, which were some of the highest levels that we've seen in student loans, but it is still significantly higher than what we've seen the last couple of years, which have been basically zero. Now, as you guys know, the Trump administration initiated a policy where they are going to begin to collect on student loans that haven't been paid on since the pandemic, and people will either have to pay their loans or they will risk garnishment if they don't pay them. And according to a report from the U.S. Department of Education from April of this year, at the time, about 25% of their entire student loan portfolio was in default. And according to a different survey from TransUnion from just a couple of weeks ago, just over 20% of student loan borrowers are in default 90 days or more. So they would fall into this category here. Now, what we previously looked at was 90 days past due. This right here is 30 days past due. And you can see that the same trend continues continues. Interestingly enough, credit cards and auto loans 30 days past due are seeing a bit of a decline, while mortgages look as though they're kind of flatlined, while on the flip side, student loans have absolutely skyrocketed to about that 8% mark. Transitioning away from student loans and talking about things like credit cards, the data doesn't look good either. And while short-term credit card debt has technically decreased quarter by quarter, it is still up year over year. And the thing that's interesting about the current debt situation is that what you see pretty much across the board is that the number of accounts that exist for debt are actually lower than they were pre-pandemic, but the amount of money that is owed through these accounts is actually higher, which shows us that while there are less people borrowing money, the people that are borrowing it are falling behind on paying it. And I think that this third-party collections graph really exemplifies this, because you can see here that the percentage of consumers in collections is actually still at historic lows. Pre-pandemic, this was sitting at anywhere between 12 to 14%, and for the last couple of years, it's been sitting at maybe 1 to 2%. But you can see that the average collection amount per person is the highest level that we've ever seen, at about $1,700. So less people are owing money, but the people who owe money owe more, which isn't good. Now, one of the concerns that I've repeatedly brought up on this channel is that people are falling behind on their debt where they didn't have to pay for student loans. You can see here that over the last couple of years, delinquency rates for credit cards and auto loans has been increasing, even whenever student loan delinquencies were at basically zero. And so what's going to happen now that student loan delinquencies are all the way up here? Of course, things like auto loan delinquencies and credit card delinquencies haven't had enough time to react to the news of student loans going delinquent, but they absolutely will in the next quarterly report for Q2. Because if we take a look at debt by age, you can see that the bulk of debt is owed by people between the age of 30 to 39 and 40 to 49. 50 to 59 is a close third. And you can see that whenever we look at debt share by product, the three youngest age groups have the largest amount of student loan debt, with 18 to 29-year-olds having by far the most. This is debt that previously wasn't being collected on, but now it is. And so what's going to happen whenever these other forms of debt, like mortgages, credit cards, auto loans, have to be collected on? This is especially true with the age group of 30 to 39 and even 40 to 49, despite the fact that the amount of student loans that they have is less, but the amount of debt that they have in other forms is more, for example, mortgage debt. And truthfully, the 18 to 29 age group is sort of in the worst position because they have the least amount of good debt of any of the other age groups, and they have the most of some of the worst debt. With high credit card debt, though not as high as 70 plus, the highest amount of auto loan debt, which is a depreciating asset, and the highest amount of student loan debt, which is obviously now becoming a pretty big issue. And you can see here that these younger age groups are going delinquent on their debt at a higher rate than older age groups, with 18 to 29-year-olds seeing the highest rate of auto loan delinquencies, and 30 to 39-year-olds seeing second place with about 4%. The same goes for credit cards. Even though delinquencies have been going down the last couple of quarters, 18 to 29-year-olds have the highest delinquency rate for credit cards, followed by 30 to 39-year-olds. And again, we go back to student loans, which has absolutely skyrocketed this quarter due to the new policy from the Trump administration. This is a topic that I've been talking about a lot lately, especially as this new student loan policy has gone into effect. But I believe that this is going to be a really big problem for the US economy, for the debt situation, and for other sectors of spending. Because as people fall behind on their student loans and their wages get garnished, or as they're forced to pay on their student loans and they have less disposable income, these people, specifically younger individuals, are going to have less money to spend elsewhere. Maybe they'll get their car repossessed or fall behind on their car loan. Maybe they won't pay their credit card and their credit will get destroyed. Or maybe they just won't have enough money to buy things like a new or used car. Now, I don't think that we will find the results of student loans going back into effect for at least a few months, if not a few quarters. But I do predict that this is going to cause a slump in demand across the car market, and I do think that it will cause an increase in delinquencies and repossessions. And I think that this will become true with all forms of debt. I think we will begin to see an increase in delinquency because of the fact that people have less money to spend because more money is going into student loans. Because the reality is people weren't able to pay on their debt whenever student loans weren't an issue. And so now that it is an issue, well, what does that mean for them? Well, it's not good. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.